morning. This is Leila Rao with our next installment of the LIA100 series. My guest today is Carol McEwan, who we all know as the person behind so many of our Agile community organizations. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you so much, Leila. I'm very happy and honored to be here.
We are so glad to have you here. And I wanted to ask you about your journey because, as I said, your name has been associated with so many of the organizations within our community. Can you talk about how you got involved and what your journey has been like?
Sure. It's kind of a funny story how I got involved. I actually worked at EDS. Many people would know electronic data systems. I worked there for 17 years. And I left there in 2008. It was kind of time for a change. And I'd always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I started out, I had a great idea. My background is software development, so that's where I started and created this really awesome product. Very quickly I learned, if we call quickly 2.5 to 3 years, very quickly I learned that you can do great things with your knowledge, but you don't have all the knowledge to get it out there. And I wasn't a great salesperson. So I networked a lot, learned a lot from a lot of people, and ran into a lady that actually worked for Scrum Alliance and brought me in for a contract position, which quite frankly lasted a very short period of time. And changes happened, and I was asked to come in as managing director a few months later. So I just loved the work that I had the great opportunity to do at Scrum Alliance, and was able to make great connections and partnerships. And there was no employees when I started there, so we started to build a great team. And Agile's in my blood. Scrum is in my blood, and the values are very important to me, and that we uphold those values. From there, I went to Scaled Agile, and many people know them as the home of SAFe, the Scaled Agile framework. And I had the opportunity to be an early adopter of online communities and the technology around that. And that was really a great passion that I had as well. So many people talk to me or tell me that they look at me as a great community builder, and that's one of my passions. So I appreciate that when I hear that, because that's what I like to do. And then now with my current role at Scrum at Scale, I get to do the same thing, create a great community around the work that we're doing at Scrum at Scale, and supporting organizations to become truly agile, and their whole business become agile. And that's kind of my journey so far, and who knows where it's going to end.
So as I mentioned, the three names you mentioned, they're all a big part of our community. What lessons have you experienced in terms of community building? What can we learn about how to build and maintain a successful community?
Building is easier than maintaining, because you have to give it as much care and feeding, if you would. It takes a lot of love and attention. So sometimes people say build them and they will come, and that's not really the truth. But you have to give them the space to build the community, and then the community will build itself, sort of thing. And that's the important part, is give them the space, but also create the invitation to be part of that community all the time. A lot of times people will say, well, what does it mean to be a part of a community? And in my opinion, it's being there to help others. It's not just getting information, it's also giving information. So getting people to share their experiences all of the time, even if it only triggers enough information for one person to learn from that story, it was worth you sharing that story with them. So that's really the part of it, is you got to build a great culture in that community and not allow for noise. So there has to be process around building that culture. And that's one of my other passions, creating great culture. I want every person on the team to feel comfortable and confident to talk to and work with any other person on the team. I try not to call them staff because they're not. They're team members, and they're just as much a part of the team as I am. And so are all the people in the community. They're part of, excuse me, who we are and where we're going. So I think some of those are part of the challenge and figuring out how to make that happen.
And I can see a great deal of resonance in what you're saying about communities and culture, especially as our Agile community has grown and scaled and transformed. Why has it been your experience that some of these things that we know how to do get lost as we grow, as we get transformed? And how can we avoid that?
Oh, sure, things get lost because I think people get comfortable in their own skin wherever they are and think that maybe, you know, because it worked somewhere else, it's going to work in the next place I go, and it doesn't. And so we as passionate people in the Agile community have to also have the ability to look from within, right? You have to say, just because it worked there, do I have to do things differently now myself? Is this going to work here? How can I help them understand so that they can choose what's going to work for them? And I'm just here as a support system. So yes, I think that we all have to continue to grow. We're never, ever all there yet. And if we stop, then we're going to lose momentum.
It sounds like the inherent tension that we should all be maintaining between being comfortable in our own skin, being self-confident, and questioning ourselves continually.
Yeah, absolutely. Just because we have an opinion, remember, doesn't mean that it's, you know, truth or fact. We have to have the courage to dig deeper and say, okay, am I right here or not? You know, again, just because it worked somewhere else doesn't mean it's going to work for you where you are today. Or even just because it worked yesterday doesn't mean it's going to work today either. So have that courage, be vulnerable, ask questions, but also talk to others who have been there and done it. We all have a story to tell, and we can all help others learn from our story, and we can all learn from others.
Basically, apply, inspect, and adapt to people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know I've changed over the years.
Yeah, I think we all have. And it's important to recognize who we are now as well as who we were and what has changed for us and help each other understand. Honestly, Carol, that could be applied to our world, not just our community.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Which would be a very amazing conversation. But back to the Agile part. What would you recommend for someone who's pursuing the kind of career that you had? Has there been always a plan for you, or is it more trust in yourself and be aware of opportunities? How responsive versus planned has your journey been?
A plan? There was no plan. There was no plan. You know, I grew up in the days where you kind of decided what you wanted to do. I mean, my dad, he worked for 42 years in the same company. My father-in-law worked for 42 years in the same company. And that was accepted back then. And so while you're growing up, you think, oh, you get a job, you stay there, right? But I think very quickly you start to learn that you've got more things to offer somewhere else, or you've got more things to learn somewhere else. And again, it comes back to that courage and figuring out where your path is going to take you. I think it's important that people realize that, and that there doesn't have to be a plan for 10 years from now. Let's be as agile as we can in our own lives. Let's inspect and adapt. Let's find out what we're passionate about, and let's follow that path and see where it takes you. You might find another passion while you're following that path, and it's okay to change there too. I think where I learned when I went to Scrum Alliance was that, you know, we can teach principles and practices, but it's really hard to teach mindset and heart. And I have I have the mindset, I think, that goes along with helping to teach those principles and practices. And so as we're building an organization or hiring people to come onto the team, that's important for people to understand too, is like, how are you hiring? Why are you hiring that person over somebody else? And I will tell you, I have learned that's a big change in the way I hire people. Is I hire for culture now. You know, yeah, it's important that they have some of the skills that are required to do that specific thing. I'm not going to hire somebody that's, you know, been a surgeon to go do marketing, or marketing if I need them to do surgery. That's not going to happen. But if I have people with the same skills or people with lesser skills, but I know they can be taught, then I'm going to hire for culture first, always. And I think that that's a big change also in my journey and where I thought my path might go. I thought I'd just be a software developer and do great things in that world, which would have been fine. But I found another passion and another path.
It sounds incredible. And I do want to continue the conversation about culture fit, right? Because in order to hire for culture, don't you first have to know what good culture is and what kind of culture you're trying to build?
It certainly helps, but you know, you can gain knowledge through an interview, but just let's take a look at some of the processes that even in interviewing have changed, right? I mean, it's important that individuals get along with the other individuals that they're working for. So team interviews have become very important. In fact, the last couple of people that we hired, I didn't even talk to. It was important that my team was, you know, more interested in working with them than me, because if that's their daily interaction, then that's what's important. But I love some of the work that I've heard has being done, like Menlo Innovations, and they do, you know, where people actually come in and work for a week. They take that risk, and the individuals think it's such a great idea because, you know, I think it's kind of cool to try before you buy, if you will, because it's really easy to pull the wool over people's eyes in an interview. Either way, sometimes people will tell you, oh, this company is the best company since sliced bread, you need to come and work for us, or the other way around as well. You know, oh yeah, I'm the greatest person on earth. Well, you're in an interview. Let's get you into a, you know, daily process so that people really truly see the true colors, and if that's where you want to work. Because I think it's just as important that people know that that's where they want to work versus, you know, I want to work with them. Culture is huge, but I think there's a way to create awesome culture.
Applying Agile to HR.
Yes.
Really is needed. Yeah.
It certainly is. Applying Agile to many different things is really needed.
Yes, which is probably a whole other conversation. So I do want to ask you about all the experiences and transitions that you've been through. Has there been sort of a generalization of, okay, this is the message I took away, or here's the message I want to share with other people? Because so many of our career journeys did not exactly go according to plan.
I think more so about the message to the community. You know, like I said earlier, I'm very passionate about the Scrum values. But those are really values that they're not just Scrum values, they're really values on, you know, how we should, you know, go about our daily business, if we want to say it that way. And they're really easy things to do. that we can be better people in our organizations and our communities and ourselves and our lives, family, whatever. But I'd like to say, let's open our minds to working in different ways that are really inclusive of others to achieve our dreams and our goals. And if our goal today is X and tomorrow it's Y, that's kind of okay. It might change. Let's focus on things that are important to us. And when I say us, I mean the collective us. Today, it might be you, tomorrow it might be the whole team. But let's be more open to other suggestions and asking for help. We know that, there's many, many quotes out there, and I'm not going to quote one individual person, but we all know that, many minds together, we can come up with great, great initiatives. So we can all do much better work together than we do ourselves. Let's respect each other, and let's commit to what's important to our teams, our businesses, and our life situations. And if we do this, we'll make a dent in transforming the world of work and even the world at large. We can do it.
Commitment and collaboration.
Amazing things.
Who would have thought, right?
Who would have thunk?
But it's so powerful, because I can only imagine what our work lives and our world would look like if we were all committed to collaboration and to being good for and to each other.
It would be a great world, wouldn't it?
That is a world I would love to live in.
Me too. Let's be a part of helping make that happen.
And Carol, you've been a part of doing that, and I look forward to being part of the communities in the world that you create.
Oh, thank you so much. I so appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation with you.
This has been an incredibly powerful conversation about culture and making the world a better place for us all. Carol, thank you for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you so much.